gorgeous Ian Callum design, an advanced but luxurious interior, high-tech aluminium construction, and that magnificent AJ V8 under the bonnet, the X150 XK dragged Jaguar into the 21st century, and these days it's a bit of a bargain slice of modern classic luxury. But a car that was £50,000 plus when it was new needs extra care and attention when buying these days. So here's your guide to the X150 Jaguar XK. Unlike so many other Jaguars of the past, the X150, like the X350 XJ before it, benefited from aluminium construction, which not only made it lighter, faster and more efficient than its predecessor, but also, crucially, rust-proof. You don't need to check the seals and the arches for rot. It won't happen on these cars. They are good to use all year round, and that is fantastic for fans of Jaguars of old. Every panel except the two bumpers, of course, are made out of aluminium alloy. Alloy is also prone to corrosion at the panel edges. It'll start bubbling up and you'll get this kind of white powdery stuff flaking off it if you flick the paint off with your fingernail. Go to a specialist body shop that's dealt with aluminium before, that's actually fine. You can sand it back, a little bit of filler possibly, and then a blow over of paint, and you'll never know. So don't be discouraged if you see a car with flaking panel edges, particularly around parts like the edges of the bonnet, the edges of the wings where the door might have rubbed it, and around the windscreen frame here. Aluminium's lighter than steel by quite some margin, but also not as strong, and that means it's far easier to dent an X150, even if someone just puts a bag down on the roof a bit heavy-handedly, ding your door in a car park, and it is a specialist business to knock the dent out of it without weakening or rippling the panel. So do just check all the way down thoroughly, just do the classic on a panel to make sure it's not all full of filler. If you've got dented panels, second-hand ones are available. There's a lot of these cars being broken, but again, they're not cheap. Plastic headlights on the X150, quite common for clouding up on these cars, and it really isn't the end of the world. You can either get a restoration kit and buff it all back, or you can buy a second-hand one for between £150 and £200. But do bear in mind, that might have stone chips and so on, and that might start to cloud up over time as well. But you can reseal it. It's got these lovely LED tail lights in two pieces, but they're also prone to leaking. The seals can fail. That'll let water into the boot, and while it won't rot the floor out, because of course it's aluminium, it will cause condensation, it will cause mould, it will ruin the carpet. It's still not what you want on a car that looks like this. So just check very thoroughly for signs of damp in the boot, on the carpets, and look right at the bottom of the boot. You can buy second-hand tail lights for between £50 and £150, but it is still worth checking. Finally, the X150 was one of the first cars ever made to have a pedestrian impact sensing bonnet, where if you run someone over, it will fire the bonnet up to kind of protect them and stop them from being thrown into the windscreen. If the sensor for that fails, you'll get a warning light, and also the bonnet might not quite shut properly. The good news is that a new sensor is between £70 and £80. You can buy it in various places, and it's even a DIY proposition to replace, so check that carefully. The X150 came with Jaguar's glorious AJ V8 in 4.2 litre guys until 2009, and then 5 litre from then onwards. And both variants, of course, you could get the supercharged XKR and then later RS as well, so there's plenty to choose from. And generally, unlike the rumours you might hear about Jaguars, this V8 is a hardy, solid unit. It's good for well over 150,000 miles if you look after it properly, but both the 4.2s and the 5 litres have got specific things to look out for. For example, the 4.2s, particularly the earlier ones, like a 2006 car, they are getting on a bit now, and that means a lot of the rubber components will start to perish and fail, and split vacuum hoses, which aren't uncommon in quite a cramped engine bay with a lot of heat going on, that can cause engine management lights. It can cause the car kind of buck under acceleration or run in limp mode and what have you, so it's worth having a good look all the way around it. Also, you can get a leaky thermostat housing on the 4.2s. Again, it's not uncommon, it's not expensive to change, and it will save your car from potentially overheating through a lack of coolant. If on a cold startup you're getting a bit of blue smoke out of the exhaust, it's probably going to be worn valve stem seals, and you'll find that particularly on higher mileage 4.2 XKs, and unless the car is in project car price territory, that's worth walking away, because the replacement engine is going to be £2,000, £3,000, £4,000, even for a leggy one. Then if you're not fitting it yourself, you've got to farm the work out, and for a car that's only going to be worth £5 or £6 at the end of it, it's just not worth it. So check those exhausts thoroughly, particularly on startup. On the supercharged XKR in 4.2 guys, there's a coolant pipe for the supercharger that runs in the V of the engine. It's known as the coolant valley pipe. Over time it can kind of crack and start leaking, and you won't really know, because the leak is going down onto the hot engine. It's just evaporating before you get a chance to get a puddle under the car, so you might not know until your car's low on coolant. So it is probably worth having a look at the coolant level on the car, drive for a few days, check again, make sure the coolant level's not going down worryingly. If it is a DIY proposition to change it. You can take the supercharger off, change the coolant valley pipe while you're there, and while you're in, it's worth doing a supercharger service, particularly on a higher mileage one. Finally, on the 4.2s, collapsed catalytic converters isn't uncommon, and if that does happen, for a start you're going to get a funny old engine note because the exhaust is kind of vibrating through the bits of leftover cat. You might get some rattling over big bumps or if you hit it when you're underneath the car, and it is probably going to run a check engine light, and the car's probably going to run in limp mode because it's effectively got a half the exhaust diameter it should. If you need new cats, they're not cheap. Used ones are £450 each, although we did see some for nearly double that, and don't forget a used one might have a limited life left as well, and brand new cats for an X150 are around £800 each, and this has got 2 of them, don't forget. So an engine warning light as a result of a failed cat could very quickly become an expensive exercise. On the 2009 on 5 litres, there are certain other things you need to check for. Specifically, water pump failure is common and terminal if it goes wrong when you're driving the car hard, because of course it'll just overheat. So again, check the coolant levels not dropping over time, make sure the car's not leaving any puddles on your driveway. With high mileage, we're talking kind of 80, 90, 100,000 miles plus, the 5 litres can suffer with stretched timing chains, and that is a big no-no. That ends with terminal consequences. If you've got no evidence of the timing chain being done around the 80, 90,000 mile mark, the kit to do it is £550. And if you're not going to do it yourself, you've then got to farm it out, £1,000 job to have your timing chain done. But on the plus side, it does save you £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 engine. Finally, the early 5 litre XKRs did suffer from some noise from the supercharger. And we don't mean that characteristic whine, we mean more a chattering and a rattling. They did fix it around 2010, 2011. And if yours is a really early one that's still making the noise, there are parts available to rebuild yours and sort it out. As for the gearbox, all X150's got a lovely 6-speed automatic, no manual offered on this one, and it is a lovely unit. It's smooth, it's durable, it can take the power, it can take hundreds of thousands of miles. It might get a little bit whiny and noisy with old age, but it won't really get any worse. Just check as ever that it goes into each gear smoothly, it kicks down, it doesn't bang into gear, because that isn't right on a gearbox that expensive. Supposedly they're sealed for life, but don't believe a word of that. Around every 60,000 miles you want to be doing an oil and a gearbox filter change as well, and while you're there it's worth checking that the sump on the auto box isn't leaking either, and again you lose your gearbox oil and that's not desirable. The really late second facelift cars had an electronic rear differential that was said to be more responsive to the extra power you could get. Occasionally you can get a warning come up on the dashboard for diff failure, and that really needn't be the end of the world. It can overheat if you're drifting it on track all day, but you're probably not driving these cars like that these days unless you're Jeremy Clarkson, and if it is an issue you may well find that it's just one of the electronic connectors to the diff has got dirty or corroded. Pull it off, stick some contact cleaner in there, reset it, take the battery off and back on again. You may find it sorts itself out. While you don't have to worry about corrosion on the body of the alloy X150, the suspension subframes are steel and they do rot, so it's worth looking under the car and making sure they're in good nick, particularly if it's an early higher mileage car. And just for a little advisory on that, check the MOT history. It is something to flag up if the subframes are rotten. An MOT tester will pick it up, because if a car's not rotten underneath, a rusty subframe will stick out like a sore thumb. As will knocking and clonking suspension. These aren't as heavy as their steel forebears, but they do still go through bushes and shock absorbers and so on, which can make the ride a bit jolty and the suspension really quite noisy. The good news is that the X150's got all-round double wishbone suspension, and that means changing bushes and components is nothing like the nightmare on the old Jaguar IRS. This is a far more simple proposition. You can even do it at home if you've got the tools and the inclination. Particular bushes to check for wear, which if they're knackered will cause uneven tyre wear, rubbish handling and a general unpleasant soggy feeling, are the damper bushes and the lower wishbone bushes, which cause knocking and clonking, and ultimately they'll cause the camber and so on of the car to be adjusted itself by the road, and then you'll get uneven tyre wear. And just a point on that, it's worth checking the tyres. Even the least powerful X150 is over 300 horsepower and the most powerful 550. So you don't want to see some 30 quid ditch finders on this car. You want matching tyres, preferably all round. They want to have plenty of tread, no evidence of doing burnouts, and they want to be a brand that you trust. The XKR came with Jaguar's CATS adaptive active suspension, and on non-R models you could have it optionally as well. If it's not working properly, the car will ride slightly wonkily and handle a bit weird. You'll get a warning light on the dashboard, but the good news is the parts are still available, unlike some active suspension units. £450 a strut is what it'll set you back, so of course you can double that per side. So if your car does need all 4 dampers, you're well up and over 1,500 quid for that. Seized brake calipers aren't uncommon on cars that are little used, but you can buy them brand new. And as for the discs, well, they're around £150 a set, and pads are around £70 a set. So again, if you don't mind doing it DIY, it's not an expensive job to do it. As for the handbrake, it's electronic on the X150 with a button in the dashboard, and it's not generally a home DIY proposition because you need Jaguar diagnostic tools to release it to later take it off and service it. So if you've got a handbrake error, factor taking it into a specialist into the budget. The interior of the X150 is a lovely place to be. It blends traditional Jaguar luxury with enough modern high-tech stuff that this really doesn't feel like an old car. If you prefer traditional walnut and cream leather like this car, you can have that, but if you want black leather and carbon fibre trim, that's available too. It's a lovely, lovely interior, this. And there aren't too many things to watch out for. Heated and cooled seats, the temperature sensors can fail, which means either they won't heat, they won't cool, or they just won't do anything, and the good news is that's not an expensive part to replace. The memory seat unit can fail, which means it won't remember all the settings you've put on it, and that will require a Jaguar diagnostic tool to plug in and just to reset it, so it might have to clear everything on there and then you re-customise it for your position. But with all the height and lumbar and seat base adjustment, it's going to take you a while to find your best position anyway, and don't be afraid to set different ones on there to find what works best for you for track driving and what have you. The sat nav in the middle there is prone to freezing and corrupting and not really working that well. Don't forget it's a nearly 20-year-old unit in the earlier X150s. You can update it with a later Jaguar system, but if you're dead set on using these cars a lot and you want your sat nav to work, we'd advise spending a bit of money and upgrading to a modern CarPlay unit. You can Bluetooth your phone to it, have a modern sat nav for your phone. It just makes this near 20-year-old car so much more usable. It feels more like a modern car. Finally, you want to check the footwells of an X150 to make sure they're not damp. It may be that the AC drains are blocked, so it's just dumping the AC moisture into the footwells of the car, and that is a dashboard out job to fix. That means pulling all of this out. That can be days or weeks of labour, particularly if you're farming it out, and that effectively writes a cheap one off if you're not doing it yourself. It can just be blocked scuttle drains that are funneling down onto the air conditioning unit, and that's not the end of the world. You just stick a bit of steel rod or welding wire or whatever through there to clean it out. But either way, check the carpets, check the floor mats, because while it won't rot your floors out, a damp interior in a car otherwise this nice is not nice. So that's everything you need to know about buying an X150 XK. But now you still want one, which one should you buy? Well, it's worth noting that all these cars, regardless of the earlier ones or the later ones, are great value at the moment, but they are still quite expensive cars to run. The tyres, as we've said, £200 or £300 each. They're not really going to do much more than 20 mpg when you're driving in town. And if you're buying in the UK, the road tax. Pretty much all X150s will be in the top £750 a year tax bracket, unless you can find one of the couple of hundred that were registered in the first month of production. So that's pre-September 2006. Then you're in for the cheaper £430 a year tax bracket. Regardless though, what are you going to pay for it? Well, if you want an early pre-facelift 4.2 like this car here, those are where the real bargains are at for X150s at the moment. You can get a standard one for less than 5,000 quid if you look around. Yes, it's going to have higher mileage, it might have some alloy corrosion on the panel edges, and it is going to have some warning lights, but this for 5,000 quid you really can't argue. If you want that supercharged XKR, you want to start your search around £7,000 to £7,500. You can go cheaper, but with a car that high performance, it's not worth cheaping out. Buy a half decent one. If you want the first facelift with the slightly revised front end and the 5-litre V8, start your search around £8,000. That'll get you one of the nicest pre-facelift cars like this, or a very high mileage earlier 5-litre car. They're going to be faster, they're going to look and feel that much more modern, but they may have more headaches in store for you, as we've said. But if you want an XKR of the 5-litre first facelift, you want to up your budget even further to £13,000. That was the cheapest 5-litre supercharged facelift we could find, but for that money, it's still less than a new Fiesta. What a bargain. If, however, you've got your heart set on the final facelift of the X150, where they completely change the front end, refreshing the interior, make it look and feel a little bit more like an F-Type in some ways, that's going to start your budget at £16,000, and that will be for the naturally aspirated ones. The supercharged XKRs for the final facelift, 20 grand plus is going to be where you're looking at, but there are all kinds of lovely special editions. And finally, the monstrous 542 horsepower XKRS, which is already tipped to be a bit of a collector's item. Start your search around £35,000 upwards. They are not a particularly cheap car, but they're also a supercar worrying monster. And again, prices are starting to go up on those. You're getting a lot of car for the money considering. As you are with pretty much all X150s, in fact, from the cheapest 5 grand 4.2 right up to that monster XKRS. These cars look great. They still look and feel modern nearly 20 years on. They're reliable. Of course, they're rust proof, as we've said. They're still great fun. And if you stick a private plate on it, no one will know you haven't just won the lottery. But let us know, have you ever owned an X150? How did you find it? What advice have you got for prospective future owners? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for all future Classics World content, check out the Jaguar videos playlist on the channel for more big cats like this, and we'll see you very soon.